They grew up on the same street, shared the same dreams, fought the same bullies. But while McGregor conquered the octagon, Patrick O'Brien conquered something much darker. Now their paths were about to cross again, and only one of them would survive. Welcome back to Fight Night Secrets, where we expose the most dangerous stories from the world of combat sports. Tonight, we're diving into the darkest chapter of Conor McGregor's rise to fame, a story that takes us back to the streets of Dublin, where childhood friendships can turn into deadly enemies, and where the past never truly stays buried. This is the untold story of how McGregor's own success made him a target of the very neighborhood that raised him. Crumlin, Dublin, 1995. Two 8-year-old boys running through the narrow streets, dreaming of escaping the poverty that surrounded them. Conor McGregor and Patrick O'Brien were inseparable, sharing stolen candy, getting into scraps with older kids, and talking endlessly about becoming rich and famous someday. Both boys came from working-class families struggling to make ends meet. Conor's father worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Patrick's father had disappeared when he was 5, leaving his mother to raise 3 children alone. The streets of Crumlin were tough, but the boys had each other, and that seemed like enough. By the time they were teenagers, their paths were already beginning to diverge. Conor found discipline and purpose in martial arts, spending every free moment in the gym, dreaming of championship belts and international fame. Patrick found a different kind of power, in the respect that came from fearlessness, in the money that came from taking what others wouldn't, in the loyalty that came from protecting your own at any cost. At 16, while Conor was training for his first amateur fights, Patrick was already running with Dublin's most dangerous crews. By 18, while Conor was winning regional championships, Patrick was coordinating drug operations across South Dublin. By 25, when Conor signed his first UFC contract, Patrick O'Brien had become one of the most feared names in Irish organized crime. They lost touch completely after Conor left for America. Different worlds, different lives, different codes. Conor learned to fight with honor in regulated competition. Patrick learned to fight without rules in the shadows of Dublin's underworld. For 10 years, they existed in parallel universes. Conor's face appeared on magazine covers and pay-per-view events. Patrick's face appeared in police files and witness protection briefings. Both men became legends in their respective fields, but only one of them became famous. Everything changed in September 2023, when Conor returned to Dublin for a massive homecoming fight at Croke Park. The event was being billed as the biggest sporting spectacle in Irish history. 80,000 fans, a purse of $50 million, and global television coverage that would showcase Ireland to the world. Conor had been back in Dublin for only 3 days when he received a text message from a number he didn't recognize. "Fancy a pint for old time's sake? The Brazen Head, 9 p.m. tonight. Time we caught up. Your old mate." The message wasn't signed, but Conor knew immediately who it was from. There was only one person from his past who would reach out like this. Only one person who would assume that 10 years of silence could be bridged with a casual invitation. Against the advice of his security team, Conor decided to go. Part of him was curious about what had become of his childhood friend. Part of him felt obligated by the loyalty they had once shared, and part of him, the part that had never fully left the streets of Crumlin, needed to prove that he hadn't forgotten where he came from. The Brazen Head was one of Dublin's oldest pubs, a place where tourists came to experience authentic Irish culture, and locals came to drink away their problems. When Conor arrived, the pub had been mysteriously emptied of customers, except for a few men in expensive suits, who looked decidedly out of place among the ancient wooden beams and traditional Irish decorations. Patrick O'Brien was sitting in a corner booth, and Conor almost didn't recognize him. The skinny kid from Crumlin had become a man of substance, not physically, but in presence. Patrick wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His hair was styled with precision, his shoes were Italian leather, and his watch was worth more than the house they had grown up near. But it was his eyes that had changed the most. The mischievous spark that Conor remembered had been replaced by something colder, more calculating. These were the eyes of a man who had seen and done things that left permanent marks on the soul. "Conor Bloody McGregor," Patrick said, standing up with a smile that didn't quite reach those cold eyes. "Look at you, you mad bastard. The whole world knows your name now." They embraced, and for a moment, Conor was transported back to their childhood. Same accent, same energy, same feeling of brotherhood that had defined their youth. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by an awkwardness that came from a decade of completely different lives. "Patrick, Jesus, look at you. You've done well for yourself." "Aye, well, we both found our own ways to make it, didn't we?" Patrick gestured for Conor to sit. "Though I have to say, your way got a lot more press coverage." They talked for an hour about safe topics, mutual friends from the neighborhood, changes in Dublin, memories of their youth. But Conor could feel an undercurrent of tension, a sense that this wasn't just a social reunion. Patrick was building up to something, and Conor's fighter instincts told him to be ready. Finally, as they finished their third pint, Patrick got to the real reason for the meeting. "Conor, I need to ask you for a favor. A small thing, really, but it would mean a lot to me." "What kind of favor?" Patrick's expression became serious, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There's a fella named Tommy Morrison, English prick who's been trying to muscle in on our territory. He thinks because he's got connections in London, he can come to Dublin and take what's ours." Conor felt his stomach sink. He knew where this was going. "The thing is," Patrick continued, "Tommy's got a brother. Danny Morrison. He's a fighter like you. Not as good, obviously, but he's got some reputation. Danny's fighting on the undercard of your big event at Croke Park." "Patrick, please tell me you're not asking what I think you're asking. I'm not asking you to throw a fight or hurt the lad. I'm just asking you to have a word with him. Let him know that his brother's business interests in Dublin are unwelcome. Sometimes a quiet word from the right person can prevent a lot of unpleasantness." Conor stared at his childhood friend, trying to process what he was hearing. "You want me to threaten a fighter on behalf of your criminal organization? I want you to help an old friend solve a problem peacefully. Think of it as community outreach." "Patrick, I can't do that. I won't do that. My reputation, my career, everything I've built. I can't get involved in your world." The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patrick's friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by the cold efficiency that had made him one of Dublin's most dangerous men. "Conor, let me explain something to you. Tommy Morrison isn't just some random businessman. He's a killer. He's responsible for 3 murders in London and 2 more in Liverpool. He's trying to bring that level of violence to Dublin, to our neighborhood. The same streets where your mam still lives." The mention of his mother hit Conor like a physical blow. "Don't you dare bring my family into this. I'm not bringing them into anything, Conor. I'm trying to keep them out of it. But if Tommy Morrison establishes himself in Dublin, there's going to be a war. And in wars, innocent people get hurt." Patrick leaned forward, his voice becoming even quieter, but somehow more menacing. You've been gone for 10 years, living in mansions in America, fighting in front of cameras. But I've been here, keeping our neighborhood safe. The old ladies who walk to church every morning, the kids playing football in the streets, the families just trying to get by. They're safe because people like me make sure they're safe. By being criminals yourselves. By being wolves who hunt other wolves so the sheep can sleep peacefully. Patrick's eyes hardened. You think the world is divided into good people and bad people, Conor. But the real world is divided into predators and prey. I chose to be a predator so that the people I care about don't have to be prey. Conor felt the weight of their shared history, the complicated emotions of loyalty and disgust warring in his chest. I understand what you're saying, Patrick, but I can't be part of it. I won't threaten Danny Morrison or anyone else. Patrick sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I was hoping you'd see it my way, for old time's sake. And what if I don't? Then I'll be very disappointed. And when I'm disappointed, I tend to get creative about solving my problems. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Conor felt anger rising in his chest, the same rage that had fueled his greatest victories in the octagon. Are you threatening me, Patrick? I'm explaining reality to you, Conor. You have a beautiful family, a lovely home, a thriving business empire. It would be a shame if anything happened to disrupt that peace. Conor stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. We're done here. Sit down, Conor. We're not finished talking. Yes, we are. Conor threw money on the table and headed for the door. And Patrick? If you or anyone who works for you comes near my family, I'll destroy you. All of you. Patrick's laughter followed him out of the pub. You can't fight the whole city, Conor. Not even you. That night, Conor couldn't sleep. He called his head of security, Marcus Flynn, and explained the situation. Marcus, a former SAS operative who had seen action in some of the world's most dangerous places, took the threat seriously. Boss, I know Patrick O'Brien by reputation. He's not someone who makes idle threats. We need to increase security for your family immediately. How bad is he? He controls about 60% of Dublin's drug trade, most of the illegal gambling, and he's suspected in at least 8 murders. The Gardaí know he's guilty, but he's too smart to leave evidence. He's also got connections to paramilitaries from the Troubles, so he has access to serious firepower. Conor felt sick. The boy he had shared his dreams with had become a monster. The next morning brought another text message. Thought you might like to know. Your mam looks lovely in that blue coat she wears to Mass every Sunday. Shame if something happened to it. The message included a photo of Conor's mother walking to church, taken from close range. Someone had been following her, watching her, close enough to hurt her. Conor's rage was unlike anything he had felt before. This wasn't the controlled aggression of competition. This was pure, primal fury. Patrick had crossed the only line that mattered. Instead of calling the police or increasing security, Conor made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He was going to handle this himself, the way problems were handled on the streets where they had both grown up. Marcus, I need you to arrange a meeting. Tonight. Just Patrick and me, no one else. And I need you to get me something. What kind of something? A gun. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Boss, you can't be serious. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about protecting my family. And throwing away everything you've built. You're not a killer, Conor. Don't let him turn you into one. Marcus was right, but Conor was beyond reason. Set up the meeting. One way or another, this ends tonight. The meeting was arranged for midnight at an abandoned warehouse in Dublin's industrial district. Conor arrived alone, as agreed, but he wasn't carrying a gun. In the end, Marcus had refused to provide one, and Conor had realized that killing Patrick would make him exactly what his former friend had become. Patrick was waiting in the center of the empty warehouse, also alone. The space was lit by a single overhead bulb that cast harsh shadows on their faces. "I was wondering if you'd show up," Patrick said. "Though I have to admit, I'm surprised you came alone. This is between us. No one else needs to get hurt." "Hurt?" Patrick laughed. "Conor, I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted your help with a small problem. By threatening my mother? By reminding you where your loyalties should lie. We're from the same place, Conor. We're bound by the same code." "What code is that?" "Threatening innocent people? Selling drugs to kids? Murder?" Patrick's expression darkened. "The code of taking care of your own. The code of never forgetting where you came from. The code of loyalty to the people who were there for you when you had nothing. You were never there for me, Patrick. Not when it mattered. You were too busy becoming everything we swore we'd never become." "And what did you become, Conor? A performing monkey for rich Americans? A sellout who forgot his own people?" The words stung because they contained a grain of truth. Conor had left Dublin behind, had built a life far from the streets that shaped him, but he had never forgotten who he was or where he came from. "I became someone who fights with honor, someone who protects people instead of preying on them, someone who builds things instead of destroying them." "How noble of you," Patrick sneered. "But nobility doesn't keep drug dealers from selling to children. It doesn't stop rapists from walking free. It doesn't protect old ladies from being mugged. Sometimes you need people who are willing to get their hands dirty. And sometimes those people become worse than the criminals they claim to fight." They stared at each other across the empty warehouse. Two men who had started from the same place, but had taken completely different paths. The weight of their shared history hung between them like a physical presence. "Last chance, Conor," Patrick said quietly. "Help me with Danny Morrison, and we can put this behind us. Your family stays safe. My problem gets solved, and we can both go back to our separate lives. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow, the whole world learns about Conor McGregor's connections to Dublin's underworld. Amazing what people will believe when you have the right documentation, the right photos, the right witnesses." Conor felt his heart sink. Patrick was threatening to destroy his reputation, to make it appear that he had been involved in criminal activities all along. "You would frame me? I would create a narrative that serves my interests. The same way you created a narrative about being a clean fighting champion. We all tell stories, Conor. Mine would just be more convincing." But Patrick had underestimated his former friend. Conor smiled for the first time since entering the warehouse. "You know what, Patrick? You're right. We should help each other out, for old time's sake." Patrick's expression brightened. "I knew you'd see sense." "Absolutely. In fact, I've already helped you out. While we've been talking, the Gardaí have been raiding your operations across Dublin. Amazing what they can accomplish when they have detailed information about times, locations, and personnel." Patrick's face went white. "What did you do?" "I gave them everything Marcus Flynn's investigation turned up about your organization. Bank records, communication intercepts, witness statements. Enough evidence to put you away for the rest of your life." The sound of sirens began to echo through the industrial district, getting closer by the second. "You always were too clever for your own good, Patrick." But you made one mistake. You assumed I was still the scared kid from Crumlin who would do anything to avoid trouble. I'm not that kid anymore. I'm a man who fights for what's right." Patrick's hand moved toward his jacket, but Conor was faster. Years of professional fighting had given him reflexes that Patrick couldn't match. He tackled his former friend to the ground just as armed gardaí burst through the warehouse doors. "Conor McGregor, step away from the suspect." Conor raised his hands and moved back as Patrick was surrounded by officers. The boy who had once shared his dreams was now lying face down on a concrete floor, being handcuffed for crimes that would end his life as surely as a bullet. As Patrick was lifted to his feet, he looked at Conor with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Conor replied. "It's been over for 10 years. I just didn't realize it until now." The trial that followed made headlines across Ireland and the UK. Patrick O'Brien was convicted on multiple charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison. The investigation that led to his arrest revealed the scope of his criminal empire and saved countless lives. Several planned murders were prevented, drug operations worth millions were shut down, and dozens of other criminals were arrested. Conor's cooperation with law enforcement earned him praise from government officials and law enforcement agencies. More importantly, it earned him peace of mind. His family was safe, his reputation was intact, and his conscience was clear. At a press conference following the trial, Conor addressed the media and his fans. "I want everyone to know that no matter where you come from, no matter who you used to know, you always have a choice about who you become. I chose to be someone who fights for justice, not someone who enables injustice. The streets where I grew up are safer now because we refuse to let criminals intimidate honest people. That's worth more than any championship belt." Patrick O'Brien appealed his conviction, but died in prison 6 months later. Officially, it was a heart attack. Unofficially, many believed he had been killed by rivals who blamed him for bringing too much police attention to Dublin's underworld. Conor attended the funeral, not out of friendship, but out of respect for the boy Patrick had once been. As he stood at the graveside, he reflected on how different choices had led them to such different endings. The boy who had dreamed of escaping poverty through crime had ended up dying in a prison cell. The boy who had dreamed of escaping poverty through honest work had become one of the most successful athletes in the world. In the end, they had both gotten exactly what they had worked for. Conor learned that sometimes the most important fights happen outside the octagon, against enemies who know your weaknesses and aren't bound by any rules. But he also learned that the principles that make you a champion in sport, discipline, honor, courage, and integrity, can make you a champion in life as well. The streets of Crumlin were indeed safer after Patrick's arrest. Children could play without fear, families could walk at night, and honest businesses could operate without paying protection money. Sometimes the best way to honor where you come from is to help it become better than it was. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't the one that makes you famous. It's the one that lets you sleep peacefully, knowing you did the right thing even when it was the hardest thing.